Kiran,
Hi.
thank you so much for making time. Congratulations on the big success of Lapata Ladies. I absolutely loved it. And I said so on Instagram, and I got a lot of people just writing actively, writing to me to agree with me, saying, yeah, such a gorgeous film, we really loved it.
So nice.
And I think that it was the happy ending that we were on Christmas to my life. We actively looked like, okay,
Yeah.
you know, that sort of warm feeling that everything worked out for everybody.
Yeah, it's so sad that it seemed almost like people were like relieved. They were like,
Yeah.
okay, it can be like this also. Life can, everything can be nicely tied up and nobody's hurt. Can it actually happen? Sad that we find ourselves in a spot where it's almost unrealistic to expect a happy ending. But I think that's what surprised and sort of like, I suppose, charmed a lot of people. But yeah, the love has been quite amazing. I genuinely didn't expect any of it. So it's you know, I'm one of those who find it hard to take compliments. So I'm always a bit shy of it. But I'm learning to also, you know, kind of learn from it and see, you know, kind of people's reactions to it. Also tell me a lot about, you know, where we find ourselves, women especially, and how so many women that you don't expect are responding in a certain way to the film. Tells me a lot about also just people that I thought I knew, you know, people like us even. How,
Give me examples. What do you mean by this?
like, you know, we often feel like people, women in cities don't have many such problems of, you know, not being seen or not having choices. But sometimes, you know, the woman you feel has had all the options in life and has got where she wants, you don't actually see behind that all the struggles that she would have gone to within her own family, or seeing her own mother go through such things, or people whom she works with at home. So people have come to me telling me stories about their mums, stories about their first marriages or themselves when they were in school, choices that they were, you know, for instance, forced to make when they were studying, you know, stories that I wouldn't have expected from city people. You know, you kind of feel like, cities, this story it would be, you know, maybe not as relevant. But I think women of pretty much every background and age group almost find themselves somewhere in Lapata Ladies reflected, I feel.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting thing how some experiences are so much the same, despite, you know, maybe coming from very so-called liberal or educated backgrounds, and you know.
But I found particularly heartening, and there was so much. I mean, you know, this interview is not about the film, but there is a sort of sisterhood in unexpected places, and it actually gets brought up, right, by these two women who are talking in their kitchen, saying that, oh, these girls are now becoming friends, and it's so important for girls to be friends. And they ask each other, you think you and I could be friends? You know, and even on the railway platform, there's a friendship, a kinship, a sisterhood in an unexpected place between those two women as well. And I find that beautiful because I believe that as women, we survive some of the tough moments in our life because of the sisterhood. And it's not always acknowledged in film and popular culture.
Fully agree. Fully agree. And I do think that, you know, it's something I'm surprised we haven't been conscious of enough.
It gets done
you know?
for, you know, that all of the friendships that we see on screen are young women who are still sort of coming of age.
Yeah.
But it sort of disappears after that.
Or we see this, the antagonism within households where women are always at each other's throats. And actually a funny anecdote is that both the writers on the film, both Sneha and Divyanidhi, both write Indian soaps. And they were like, this is as different from what we do.
Type faster.
Exactly.
Because someone takes it away.
Undoing all those like sort of stereotypes and tropes that we've been stuffing into television, of women always being enemies or, you know, in some way competitive within households. And I think that was one of the nicest, the scene that you talked about was one of the nicest things, because we don't realize how important it is for us to support each other. You know, and in that we get that space to, you know, advance ourselves towards our own little goals as well. You know, it's not competitive between us. And I think it's been set up like that since time immemorial, you know, women fighting over the same guy, or, you know, it's always been like that in in television.
So I have this theory about it, right? Because in those shows, either two women, mother and wife, are fighting for the attention and the affection of one man.
Yeah.
It's always, you're always fighting for a slice of the patriarchy.
Yeah. Yeah.
In some way.
Yeah.
And you're all hostages of this patriarchy.
Yeah.
And you can only function from within, in the spaces that have been allowed to you. And your currency is always the affection of a man.
Correct.
And it could be your son, it could be your father, it could be your, you know.
I think it stems from the fact that women just are not financially independent.
Yeah.
It just starts and ends there. I mean, the fact that women are not paid for household help, for working at home, for doing a range of things, not just sweeping and swabbing, just because women may not be doing the actual physical labor of it. The management of a home and children is just unacknowledged and unpaid for. And
unseen.
And
it's
unseen.
invisible.
And genuinely not appreciated. It's invisible. And the second is when it comes to inheritances, and where women or sisters within a family are always very naturally given less than their brothers.
You have no agency if you don't have financial security.
Exactly.
Because, and I keep saying this, that even women who make their own money and don't manage their own and hand it over to a male family member to look after, what you put yourself is a position where you want to make a decision that could be professional, it could be personal. You're walking away from a bad job, bad boss, bad spouse. That should not also be a financial decision. You should have the money to be able to do that. You should not have to ask for permission financially.
Correct.
And that only happens when you don't have control over money. Then you have to ask someone, can I leave this marriage? Can I leave this job? Can I leave this boss? Can I leave this situation?
I'm sure there are, I mean, a huge number of marriages where women cannot leave for fear that they'll be on the streets.
Yes.
You know, the fact that I have friends who are highly, you know, sort of successful women, you know, live in big cities like Mumbai, and they would have made, and this friend of mine has made all these investments because she has this sort of financial sense and has been investing in stocks and shares or whatever, funds, etc. But all in her husband's name. And I'm just like, what? Why? Why would you do that? You know, it's all actually your sense. You've been studying it. You've been... But the investment is in the... So it's actually something that women need to learn a little bit. And there, I think it's been, you know, in a sense, it feels almost like women are ashamed to be having to work or earning a living. In many parts of this country, it's like the women don't need to work. Okay. This is another annoying thing. Like, I was like, yeah, but she needs to. And it's happened to also friends of mine where they're like told that they don't need to work. Why would they want to work?
So the ability to be able to leave you whenever I place.
Exactly.
You know.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm like, yeah.
You know, and this is a show about failure, which is also on the other side, a show about success, right? Do you believe that the definition for success for women is fundamentally different from men? That the yardstick is different?
Absolutely. I mean, I think for women, firstly, the lane that you're running on always will have the hurdles, and the men will have no hurdles to run on. Yeah. And so reaching the same kind of milestone will take you double the time. And you'll always be, you know, sort of judged for, you know, sort of whether you did the right, you know, had the right family, marriage, children, all these other things also come into your box as a definition of success, where I don't think anybody cares if your MD or CEO or whoever he is hired, whether he's married and how many children he has, nobody asks. Whereas when you have to do anything, those are all considerations that are very real for most women. And it's like you're not just jumping that hurdle, but you are the one who has kettlebells in your hand and jumping, you know. So it's just weighed, you know, a little weighted differently.
And I find this, you know, weird, because the same question, are you married, do you have children, is both success and failure. Because on one hand, if you're sitting at an interview and, you know, someone's looking to hire you, whether you're married or have children, or you're going to get married and have children, will be seen as a disadvantage. And on the other hand, if you're at a family event and you're an extremely successful young lawyer, doctor, journalist, whatever it is, and you're not married and you don't have children, that's seen as failure.
Correct.
So it's almost like we can't get on top of all of it.
You can't get
at
it
any
right.
point of time.
Yeah.
We're always failing at something.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so,
And also for men, it's always like this, because it's a straight line. Like I was telling you earlier, my son and I were discussing success. And I mean, we're not discussing success. He is obsessed with electric guitars, and he was telling me about this guy called something Becker, who is was a phenomenal guitarist, and he achieved what he did at 16. And it kind of made me think also a little bit about what is success, because when you get to where I am, which is far away from 16, I'm just like, what are the milestones that I should be thinking about in my own life? Like, what do I consider? And I think for most people, it's a kind of financial security that makes you feel like, okay, if anything happens to me at any point, I'm well taken care of and therefore successful. I have a car, I have a home, and I have enough money in the bank, and that's what success for most people looks like, I think. For most creative people, it'll be like, I have an Oscar in the cupboard, or, you know, I've got this, you know, Ramnath Goenka award, and that could be, that's another measure of success. But honestly, I think for many, many women, it is the ability to continue doing what you love doing, living life on your own terms, having perhaps enough time to, you know, spend with your parents, spend with your kids, go on that solo holiday and make the work that you want to make, you know.
So all four of us then.
Exactly. And not be, you know, put to these standards that men are, which are none of these things. Like, you don't have to think about parents, children, home, husbands in many cases, all of that. And just look at, okay, so when am I going to move to my next 6 to 7 figure, you know, salary? So that I think is the, you know, for me, it made me think a little bit when I was telling Azad that, you know, yes, achieving something at 16 is great, but achieving it the same thing at 50 is also great. You know, if I could play that piece of that guitar piece now, I think it would be a much greater achievement on some level than a kid who's been playing it since he was 4 and, you know, has, you know, been encouraged and can do it at 15. But most women, especially women who come back to work, say after they've had kids, after they've taken a career break for whatever reason, lots of women actually post their children growing up, they're getting married young, you know, sometimes in their late 30s or 40s want to go back to work because their children now, they're empty nesters, children have gone. It's much harder. So doing something when you're 40s and 50s is actually a greater achievement to my mind than achieving something very, very young, you know, especially because you more often than not are not welcomed back to, you know, as easily to work.
But I find that those second wind of women who are coming back after their children have, you know, sort of flown the nest are the ones to watch out for. I mean, I would hire all of them because they've now managed so much.
Exactly.
And, you know, they have such ability to multitask.
Exactly.
And they have all of this pent-up efficiency. Nowhere to put it.
Yeah. That is real success.
Yeah, that is real success.
You like manage the football timings and, you know, family
and the
holidays
and the drops
and
and somebody else is like airport booking
birthday
and
parties. Oh my God.
return gifts.
Return gifts. Welcome to that life.
Yeah, I actually texted a friend. I had to go to a birthday party and I sent a message saying, hey, listen, I don't have a gift. Because it's election season and I'll buy your child a gift after elections are over. And she said, my God, I can't believe this message, but I had to be sent. Because there's just, you know, and actually I feel that if, as moms, we all asked each other, we'd all be like, dude, forget the gift. Nobody cares.
Nobody cares.
But there's this artificial pressure to show up with a gift.
Yeah, I wish there was like some shortcut around that gift giving and return gift and party thing.
You've obviously, you know, you've had a very interesting journey in filmmaking.
Yes.
You've come back to directing after a while. Was there fear of failure?
Oh, absolutely. I thought
do you have fear of failure? Is it something you live
course.
with?
Yeah. I'm extremely hard on myself. I'm very worried that I'm going to just totally destroy any good thing I've done. No, properly. And honestly, I was coming, though I had been working and part of film sets and writing and all the rest of it.
20-something years.
Yeah, no, and the gap was when I came back with this one. I was shooting in 2022, and my last release had been in 2011. So it had been more than 10 years since I had directed. So it was, there were multiple sort of stages of the worry. One was, of course, like, you know, will I be able to do this? So much has changed in the film ecosystem in a sense, technologically, technically. And just, you know, what are people watching now? What is the kind of like sort of filmmaking that, because I'm not the kind who voraciously watches films and knows exactly what's happening. I don't watch, in fact, haven't watched a lot, quite ashamed to admit. So the fear was really, how relevant am I? Am I going to be able to make something that people will want to watch? And then slowly as I was going along, I was like, is it working? Are people going to laugh? And from one edit to the next, you know, I was just like a state of nerves. Honestly, which is why now when I get this reaction, it's a sort of, I'm beginning to believe it. Let me just say, I'm beginning to believe that I made a good film.
So there is some imposter syndrome.
Oh, 100%. 100%. And I think, I don't know whether that's true of most people, because I see lots of people who are super confident of themselves. And I'm just like, where does this come from? Because like what you're saying is actually quite like is BS to me. I'm hearing BS. So, yeah, no, and so I think, I don't know about imposter syndrome. Is it a women's thing? I don't know.
I feel like more women have
More women have it.
We might not be able to blanket, but more women have imposter syndrome than men do.
Yeah.
And remarkably successful women.
Yeah. Weird, huh? So, yeah, I have it, you know, a pretty bad case of it myself. And which is why I think it's hard to take compliments, because I'm genuinely disbelieving. For the first couple of weeks, though, I just was like, thank you, but I just didn't believe any of it.
You always assume that the people closest to you are just being polite.
Yeah.
They're just saying
we
that
had
because
this preview of the film, which was sort of like meant to be this grand premiere. Anyway, it was full of a lot of people that I knew and friends. And so therefore you feel like, okay, maybe it's just my friends. But the reaction from that preview was so good and so warm that I was like, you know, are people just really happy that I made a film and then they can like be, you know, it wasn't terrible, so they can be nice to me. But then that continued and I just kept feeling like, okay, people are just being really nice to me because, you know, they're like, poor thing is making a film after, everyone's like, after 13 years, come back. So it's like always sort of predicated on that, like sort of like prefaced by the 13-year gap. But yeah, it's...
Yeah, you know, for me, there was one person who paid me a compliment and it was such a warm compliment that I thought he was being sarcastic.
Oh.
Yeah. I really mean that. It was like, wow, that was, you know, that's an oddly nice thing to say. So I think there is this general, you know, trouble to accept compliments.
Believing that you can do. I mean, I think it's quite healthy, honestly. It just makes me work really hard. I work really hard. One of the things that I appreciate about myself, and I'm learning to do that, which is like some new age thing I'm learning from youngsters about like the self-love and all. But that is like appreciating the fact that I try my best. I genuinely put in a lot of hard work, and I think that in itself is you know, sort of should even say coming to an interview, I'm just like, you know, will I say something that Faye will be interested in?
Find interesting.
You know, what you said, all those things come to your mind and you're like, have to tell yourself that no, you yourself are interesting enough.
Yeah.
You don't have to, you know. So yeah, I suppose maybe it's a certain, you know, kind of era that you're born in. Because I'm a 70s, 80s kid, and that time span, you know, girls were really taught to not speak unless they were spoken to, not run. The nuns in my school were like, no running, walk with your, you know, hands by your side, all the kind of like quieter.
Seen and not heard.
And I was like the opposite. I was just like constant chatterbox, horrible. The report card always says talks too much.
Yeah.
She's good at it, but talks too much.
Talks too much, yeah. Mine said dreamer.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's nice. That's a compliment.
now it is.
Daydreamer is not
Daydreamer. Yeah, precisely. Daydreamer. I was always like fluttering about it.
So nice.
But yeah, I remember those.
Ishan from TZP.
Yeah. Was there ever an element when you started your career, or were the points of your career where people were like, oh, but she's just Aamir Khan's wife. That's how she gets to, like,
100%.
pretend to be the boss, but she's not really.
A lot of people, I'm sure, attribute all my success to Aamir, thinking like, obviously being Aamir's wife or ex-wife, she is able to have. There's no denying the fact that I have had opportunity by knowing Aamir and, having access to him and being able to share my script with him for Dhobi Ghat and things like that. But most people will assume he did it only because I was his wife, and not because he loved the film and
he saw merit in it.
Yeah, they don't see merit in it. So yeah, I got kind of accustomed to that. That actually doesn't bother me that much anymore. I kind of it used to bother me before people even said anything, because I used to doubt whether he really liked it enough and was doing it because I was his wife. But Aamir is, as anybody who knows him will tell you, is kind of very clear about the fact that, listen, we can do a lot of stuff together because we're friends or family, but don't make me do work for you because we're friends or family. I won't do it unless I really believe in the project. So even Imran's film, for instance, Jaane Tu Ya Jaane Na, he did because he genuinely loved that film, not just because he wanted to launch Imran, So it feels like, it's still one of those things that rankles. It feels a bit unfair, but I know why people must feel that, because, anyone who has access to a huge star, it is an advantage that very few people have, and I'm very grateful for it. I'm super privileged. I say that before anything else, is that I'm like super, super privileged.
So, I remember when we sort of heard about you, and everybody was like, who? What does she look like? What does she look like? There was a lot of that, right? And you're not the cookie cutter star wife.
No.
And everybody's like, wait, hang on, what? And what I love about it is you stayed that way. You've not let it sort of fundamentally change who you are, at least from the outside. I mean, but you have a very different family. You come from a different background as the rest of the sort of, the film setup, let's say. What was that like?
The good thing was there was no social media then when Aamir and I started dating, 2004, well before Facebook was invented. Wasn't it? Like, I don't remember actually. Maybe Facebook was around, I don't know.
There was something called Orkut for a while.
So, no, but I remember going to a Goa film festival with Aamir and passing a lady in the line, and she looked at me and she was like, oh, you're not bad looking. So I was like, shit, not like the photos in the paper, you're not bad looking. So I was like,
that's
like that. Oh, you're not too bad. Like, everyone, it seemed like people in the newspaper was like, ye chashmish. Like, one of the people I remember saying, oh, she wears glasses, so she must be intelligent. That is good.
I used to wear glasses then. I felt very seen thanks to you, buddy.
Yeah. So, curly hair, glasses, it was not the norm, and still isn't, I guess. But that luckily didn't bother me, because it didn't bother Aamir. Aamir was least concerned with what people said, and that was what sort of I felt as well. Because, I mean, the second your partner expects you to sort of adopt or conform to all these sort of standards.
Was there an element for you of, this is who I am not changing me. Everybody else is just going to have to get used to it because I'm here now?
Yeah. I mean, on some level, Faye, when I try to think of that time, it was in some ways quite confusing, because I brought up pretty simply, a middle-class girl, didn't have like so many clothes to go to all these events, and people were, I would suddenly be going, I hadn't been abroad that much, so to go travel international, first class, learn how to, do all my seatbelt over my blanket and all this for the first time. And then when I traveled, we'd go to these fancy, designer stores. I just look at those prices and be like, I cannot buy this jacket. I will never buy this jacket, you know. To obviously slowly, you know, getting a couple of things that I would like. But I suppose what happened over time was like, I at one point thought I should wear a lot more designer clothes so that, you know, it would be acceptable in a certain kind of event. So I went through a phase of like sort of, you know, wanting perhaps to be slightly more well-dressed. But I couldn't keep it up for very long. It just wasn't me. I mean, I feel, you know, brands top to toe, just they wear you instead of you wearing them, really. You know, it's like literally it wasn't, I just couldn't do it. And I reverted to a nice middle ground where I was comfortable to wear whatever I wanted to wear. And I think that helped. It helped me, I suppose, also for people to know who I was. I was genuinely not an actor. I was like, listen, I'm a worker bee, Baba. I'm not here to be glamorous. I want to make films. I do production. You know, I'm an AD. I run around like 24/7. I'm not going to wear Louboutin heels everywhere I go, you know. So I think people got used to it. And more than that, I got accustomed to the idea that, listen, you know, honestly, you're not going to ever be that person. So it's okay.
Now in the sort of world of social media, and you said there was no social media back then, right? I always wonder about young people. You're raising a child in this world which is so photo heavy about, and this such liberal freedom to comment on how other people look, and not in a nice way. Do you find that more challenging? Not as like, do you find the environment more challenging for someone who would say start off now?
Definitely. I find it actually, I mean, and I feel it so much because I haven't grown up with it, and I'm just a really not digital native at all. In that sense, I've really struggled to keep pace with, you know, sort of changing technology and all these new kind of platforms and things like that. I've just gotten back onto Instagram, and I genuinely still don't know how to put a link in and do things. So I'm not, I suppose, their most, you know, targeted user, but like my son is. And I do worry about the effect it has, especially on that sense of self and, you know, sort of being able to be different, being able to be yourself in a place where there's so much comment on everything. And we've seen how horrible people can be.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you know, I suppose the good thing is just having a lot of conversations around that. And luckily for me, I'm not, I don't conform to any of these sort of standards of what even, say, other school mums are like, you know, coming to school with designer bags and all the rest of it. I don't do any of that. So I suppose if you are confident in the way you are as a parent, I feel like that has quite a big influence on how your kids deal with social media, because the second you kind of have a certain emphasis on the way they look or the way they you know, even school and performance and how they do grade-wise, they're going to have to, they you know, they don't even have that steam to let off at home, you know, because that pressure comes from school and from social media. Whereas at home, if you have an environment where it doesn't, very encouraging environment, I feel it's the only way to kind of bypass some of the pitfalls of social media.
You know, I don't remember school being this heavily pressurized when I was at school. Like, there wasn't this kind of, you know, the kind of pressure that young people are feeling today.
Yeah.
And the idea that you have to keep an eye on the mental health constantly. I mean, you know, my parents did a head count at the end of the day. If everybody was in, they were in. You know what I mean? It was not. It seems like a completely different environment to raise children. Right?
It is. It is. I think it's also because of the fact that we didn't have stimuli like this as much at all. And I mean, I'm not even a TV kid, really. I mean, TV came to us when I was like, whatever, 8, you know. So the stimuli you had was very immediate and personal and filtered in that sense. And here, you're at sort of at the fractally at the speed of light, being bombarded with stimuli of all kinds. And your, I mean, you know, that filtration it takes a while before you build up your own sort of defense mechanisms to some of those, more cutting, more difficult stimuli, really. Even if it's bad news or anything else, it's like so many other things that we just expose ourselves to when we're scrolling, And for someone like me, it's schizophrenic, literally. You're going on an Instagram feed and you're going from, somebody walking on a Cannes red carpet to some, to a camp in Rafah to, some cat video. So, for children to kind of navigate that to, is anything real? Does any, what actually is okay? What is, can I be happy even, because the world is coming, we're falling apart, and it's a very complicated and it's scary to my mind, but perhaps for them a reality, and I think one of the reasons why manga is so big amongst my son and all his friends and teenagers of a certain age, teenagers and kids of a certain age, is because it, in some way, is a huge release of a lot of the, roller coaster ride that they go through in life with school and academic pressure and, suddenly you're becoming a, sort of teenager. So slight, sort of your world is opening up hormonally and all kinds of other things are happening to you. And manga kind of, in some way, you're able to do all the things that you would never be able to do in real life through these characters and live your, sort of kind of almost let off steam through all this like complicated world of very, very complicated. All the games that they play, whether it's Minecraft or everything, has levels and levels and levels, and they're constantly, they're very, very into all, you'll get there. I had a 45-minute conversation on JJK, which is Jujutsu Kaisen, which is a manga, which is now anime, and it's crazy because I couldn't understand a word of what Azad was saying, but he spoke for 45 minutes about it. So, I think that kind of lets steam off for them, which is interesting again for me because, like, it's another completely make-believe world. It's mostly dark. It's very violent and dark and not at all like simple,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
On the Instagram front, because I spend so much time on it, I consume a lot of, tough content. I believe that we have something called vicarious trauma, where you feel what the other person is feeling in that video. And up till, this happened to us, you'd only have to feel the trauma in your neighborhood.
Correct.
Because something that happened in Palestine would be a strip in your newspaper, which would only possibly have data in it. And, you'd read it and it wouldn't move you. And now you're looking into the eyes of every child who's hurt. And you're feeling those feelings in a way that our minds were never meant to sort of take in. Because now you're feeling the pain of the whole world. Every tree that's being felled, every child that's being hurt, every, polar bear that's starving.
Yeah.
Do we have that ability?
Do we have that ability? And is it in any way constructive is one of the things that I feel like we need to discuss. How we, sort of, especially for our younger generation, they are learning obviously to comb through, at least in good schools, they're learning to comb through information that comes at them, check for sources, and things like that. But is it constructive to have a constant news feed or constant barrage of tough news, like you said? And how much is it moving the needle in the opposite direction or where we want to be going? And that's, I think, where jobs like mine come in, honestly. Where I feel like, and that's actually why I really wanted to make Lapata Ladies, because I really felt like there's a space, I think, for us to, sort of have meaningful, constructive conversations, to be able to like suggest small solutions, create like little bits of hope so that we can get out of some kind of mess. Because just saying that it's a mess beyond a point is just not helping us move anywhere.
Yeah.
And I kind of want to do this with what I do going forward, because
which is tell stories with happy endings.
Not necessarily, but tell stories where in some way I tackle, say, something that's a tough truth, let's say, like a not very, or not spoken about enough truth, and or expose something that's been insidiously going on for a long time, but perhaps show somebody being able to use their agency to circumvent it, so that there is some way in which we are, you know, prescribing some way forward. I feel. I feel like, obviously, that's, you know, artists and pure art forms are not meant to give you solutions. Technically, we are meant. You know, it's an experience. It's what you take from it, and you know, it's up to the person making it, and really quite objectively, subjectively, the person who's watching it. But for me, I mean, because also I studied mass communication, the idea was, you know, I wanted to work in development. So I was like, how do I marry the two? Because I love film, I like the arts very much. I don't want to make just, I mean, these are not like PSAs, you know, I don't want to do that. But actually mining the human condition for so many things that we, you know, don't often talk about or have buried, and show how perhaps some people have found a way to way out of it, is one way in which I can use my craft, I think. I mean, I'm hoping to be able to do it. With Lapata, we managed to, I think, start a conversation of a kind. Let's see.
I was recently told by someone, if you're woke, you're broke.
Really?
Okay.
Why
and
is that?
So it's a trope. Basically, it's the idea that this whole, like, you know, wanting to stay on the right side of political correctness and, you know, and not embracing the old-fashioned trad way of doing things. And this whole cancel culture is just going to, like, you know, ruins everything for everybody. This idea that you need to be, you need to provide equality and representation and all of these, like, various things. Whereas you do it the old-fashioned way, everybody makes money, everybody's happy. But my question is, do you feel, and we really have at this point, and this is something I struggle with, even within the film industry, there are the macho, masculine, you know, and I won't use any adjectives. They're just macho, some on purpose masculine type of ideas. And then there are women telling women's stories on the other side. And the masculine stuff is really successful. What does that, you know, what does that tell us about us?
I think the first thing it tells us is that men mostly have access to the money to watch films. This is again, I feel it comes back to women not having financial independence, and this has been known. You know, this is not just my opinion. This is a fact that men are the primary movers towards cinemas. In most,
they choose what film.
They choose what film the family perhaps is going to watch, and even when the family is not going to watch, they are going to watch on their own. Right. So, and I'm not talking about, you know, sort of urban woke families. So that, I think it tells you that, which is why, I mean, I literally met a studio head who said he does sex determination on scripts because it's the masculine scripts that are doing well. So they put to this test. It's bizarre, but you're right. It's a kind of a, it's a sign that perhaps, you know, men are the primary consumers of much of this big macho content that we make. Having said that, yeah, you're right about the fact that perhaps even as women, we've become accustomed to watching these things and enjoying it, or like saying, theek hai, it's not exactly for me, but we just don't find ourselves represented anyway. We haven't for time immemorial, so we are accustomed to going and watching these films as well, right? So, yeah, I mean, they just do better. I don't know what to do.
You know, I've recently had this conversation with my husband. The film Gladiator, which was this blockbuster success, right? it had one very disturbing detail about how his wife and child were killed in the beginning of the film. And then it moves forward and he does all of these things. And as a viewer, I couldn't move past that one detail. That is the only part of that film that has stayed with me. And every time I even see the poster or hear the music,
You think of that.
I think of that one thing and my brain shuts down. But that was content that was not made for me.
Correct.
Right? And it was not, I mean, I don't know if filmmakers have to be sensitive to. I don't know. Yeah.
Different audiences have different buttons that people press, and I guess filmmakers have never been looking for women's buttons. They think all we really want is some sappy love story or whatever, and that's it. Women like action, women like romance. They like a whole bunch of things that men like. They just like themselves represented on screen. I mean, well represented. That's, I think, you can have the machoest people in any film and have the most interesting women characters, and that would be fine too, you know. But it's just that's not just
two separate things.
Exactly.
Is what you're saying.
Yeah. I think that's the only thing that I feel we need. I mean, and that somehow is not the conversation. It's really about like, let's stop macho. Macho films are never going to end, right? We'll always have people who want to see fast bikes, big guys with huge biceps, and women in sexy clothes. Everybody wants that, perhaps. But like, the woman in sexy clothes can also, perhaps, or have a some sort of role beyond that. There was a study done by TISS on, it was called Lights, Camera and Time for Action, and they were looking at the representation of women both on screen and behind the screen in a period, in a 5-year period, from 2006 something till the lockdown. And they took largely some 20-25 regular mainstream films and then like 5 so-called women's oriented films. And shockingly, we all keep feeling, I've worked in the industry for like 24 years. I feel like things have just gotten better, right? I just feel like, oh, of course, it's much better than when I started. But numbers say otherwise. Women are highly underrepresented, especially when it comes to writing. We keep thinking women screenwriters, women. When you actually go down credits, it's like some less than double digits women representation in those years in screenwriting or in any of the positions of decision making, let's say producing or directing, even when it comes to sort of the lead kind of crew members. But even on screen, something like less than, even the women's oriented films, there were some like 20% women who had a role that was not the romantic co-lead. So most women are resigned to playing a romantic co-lead, which is why, after a certain age, everybody is worried about how they look.
And also, so with the advent of OTT and there's a lot more content just generally being made, that has not changed?
That has changed. That has changed it a lot. And I think that's what came from television, where women, kind of, but it's just that somehow now, I mean, I'm again, I don't want to put anyone down or anything down, but I feel very much that OTT also is looking to somehow follow the success of television. Like, a lot of them are moving towards content that goes broad because they all want more subscribers and therefore trying to emulate like these TV tropes of household things or whatever. I mean, it just ends up being the same thing.
May I ask you a few personal questions? You can choose not to answer them if you want to. I recently, a couple of days ago, saw you and Amar vote together.
Yeah.
And you apparently live in the same, in the same building, and you're allowed sort of co-parenting. And when we started off, we talked about how the measures of success or failure for women are different for men. A divorced man is not the same label as a divorced woman. And so then the next question that pops up is, why not just stay together? If you're friends and if it's not so bad, and I'm sure someone's asked you this in the past, but you're so close. Parents, yeah, just like quietly just lump it, right?
Just-
Which is what a lot of women do. So why did you decide, or how did you decide that no, I'm not going to just stay together for the
Well,
appearance?
because I suppose I was very keen on having my space to myself and being independent again. I felt secure in the fact that we have a strong enough relationship as co-parents, as family, really, to survive the divorce in that sense. And I would be able to also have my independent, individual time to myself and my life ahead without losing, for instance, the love of a partner, the security and comfort of knowing Azad's dad is also my friend, is also my family, you know. Um, it took me a while to get there, mentally, emotionally, also for Amir to get there, because we needed to be secure in the fact that, look, this, we are not really going anywhere. That this is, we are, you know, we are there for each other for the long term. It's just that we don't have to be married, you know. And I feel like relationships sort of in many cases need from time to time to be redefined in some ways, you know, because we change as human beings, we grow, we need different things, and this is what I felt would make me happy and has made me very happy, honestly. And I mean, you know, because before Amir, I was single for a very long time. I really enjoyed my independence. I was lonely, but now I have Azad, so I tend not to be lonely.
Yeah.
I think loneliness is the only thing that most people are a bit worried of when they get divorced or, you know, lose a partner or whatever. And I feel like that has, luckily, I haven't felt at all. I've felt very, in fact, supported by both family, his family and mine, and by my friends. So I actually, it's been only good stuff, you know. It's been
You're
like
the
a very
starter
happy
fire,
divorce.
you know that, right?
Yeah. It's been a very happy divorce.
Because before, a lot of times, and I have many of my very close friends who are divorced, and I remember the sort of emotional energy it takes that they expend in making that decision. Because there's a lot of, you know, if there's no abuse and it's not a, you know, it's
Correct.
not a bad place. If it's just fine, then, you know, what's your
Why?
problem?
Yeah, what's your problem?
Society just, you know, there's a lot of onus on the women to just sort of grin and bear it.
Exactly.
Whatever that it may be, that it takes a lot of emotional energy to make that decision. So did you get a lot of that from you said parents saying that?
I did. It took me a while also to arrive at what I wanted from my life. And I am privileged in that I can think about myself and what I want in life, you know. And I knew that this was where I wanted to get. I wanted to get to a place where we could have the familial love that we do have, the closeness we've had working together, living together for, you know, we were married 18 years or something, and we lived together for 3-4 years to 1.5 years before that. So 20 years of my life pretty much I've spent in and around Amir. So I kind of wanted, there's a comfort in knowing that those 20 years of relationship that you've built, you're not going to lose it. Because there's a lot of respect, there's a lot of love, there's a lot of shared history, shared laughs, shared ideology. You know, there's lots of things that we look for in each other. So I didn't want to lose that. So to arrive at that place took me a while. When I was secure enough to say, yeah, you know, I think we don't need the paper to say that we are married, but we know that we know what we mean to each other. You know, this is a partnership that will stand the test of time despite a divorce. You know, which is actually great, because I think that that paper is only really meant to secure a woman and a man, maybe children financially, or in terms of, you know, how legally you move on, you know, your inheritance or something. But relationships aren't made on paper.
But you did say in another interview that you find marriage stifling.
No, I said that I think marriage can be stifling for women,
For
particularly.
women,
I feel because men generally have the freedom to be out and about because of work, when they go out to meet friends or they have get-togethers, that's totally fine, and they are more often than not allowed their time out.
Yeah.
Whereas most women are loaded with childbearing, looking after parents or in-laws, running the house, sometimes also working. But and therefore marriage really allows them so little time to themselves, to let off steam, to do other things. So I meant in a sense of, as an individual, men usually have more opportunity, even within the, say, the binds or bounds of marriage, to look for themselves or be themselves and be more of an individual within that partnership. Whereas women, more often than not, don't have the luxury of it, is what I said.
If you were to now, look back on your entire journey as a filmmaker at various positions of the set you worked on, was there ever a moment of what you would describe as failure?
Well, in some ways, both these films have not been great at the box office. I mean, Dhobi Ghat did very big business for that time, and 15 years later, or whatever, 13, 14 years later, actually, even Lapata Ladies didn't do that much more than Dhobi Ghat. So, in some ways, I do feel that sense that box office wise, we were not a success by the traditional sort of metric of success, which is hundreds of crores or even 30, 40, 50 crores. So I do feel that sense of, I suppose, failure is the way to put it. I do feel like responsible for the fact that the film didn't do so well at the box office. That's about the only. I felt it a lot during Dhobi Ghat, because also we didn't have any alternate, we didn't have OTTs then. So that really meant that the film wasn't watched by a lot of people. I knew that that film was different, and it was, for its time, actually very unusual to even think of a theatrical release. But I did feel a little sense of failure that, okay, it wasn't, it didn't get a long run at the box office. But other than that, honestly, no, I've not felt a deep sense of, having failed at something. I feel failure really is that everyday kind of failure that I've felt, like, where I've not been able to say, in 10 years, I've been working relentlessly. Like, I've had really, really busy days for 10, 12, continuously, ever since I started working, and especially since my first film. I was very confident that I'd make another film soon, but that soon just didn't come. So that sense of failure was something that dogged me on a daily basis. That empty page, or that inability to put that full stop and say the end, was the failure that I really struggled with in 10 years. And I'm sure most creative people have to go through that sense of failure on a very frequent basis, when whatever they want to do isn't achieved quickly, or even sometimes not achieved at all. You've worked at something for a very long time and it never sees the light of day. I have so many such subjects that I've written and hopefully will see the light of day, but so far they are in the, still in the closet. So it's more that kind of sense of failure, that I didn't do it faster, that I didn't churn out a film within 2 years or 4 years or even 10 years, But I don't personally consider that a failure. It's more a sense of not having achieved things as quickly as I would have liked.
Because there's this whole sense of, I should have been doing this by now.
So, I mean, many people, like, sort of Mozart did everything and died at 32, and some people, Clint Eastwood was making films in his 90s. So, like I was telling you, I was trying to have that conversation with Azad about someone achieving something very young. But I feel like that's something I've learned, at this grand old age, is that, every phase of your life helps you discover what you're capable of, what you want to do. Your milestones keep changing. The idea of success and failure changes, So actually, what the disappointment perhaps that I felt during Dhobi Ghat, I didn't feel as acutely, even though Lapata Ladies could have done much bigger business.
So
I didn't feel it as acutely because for me, the film was loved in a way and, was grew in a small way, but only through the love and word of mouth, which for me was in success, has been success. So I don't, for instance, use that same metric anymore of box office as seriously. So I guess as you change, as you grow older, your idea of success and failure changes. I'm lucky to be able to be making work. For me, that's my success, is that I feel relevant. I feel like I have a lot to say. And that's success for me. What else is there? When you're working in the arts, when you're an artist, all you want is to have stories to tell. There's so much more that I want to do. Whether you able to make it or not is what people hinge success on, or how well it's received. But I feel as an artist, you're successful if you're still excited about your work.
If I were to ask you to put it in a nutshell, one thing that you would consider your biggest learning that you did not know when you started working, what would that be?
I think the fact that, things take time. It's one of those things that a lot of older people will tell younger people is that, a lot of people feel like it's over if they haven't done something by the time they're 30 and 35. And I know so many young people who are struggling with anxiety about the fact that they've not achieved whatever they thought they'd achieve by the time. And, they think they're so much older than someone who's 18 and coming out of college. And they're like, oh my God, I'm almost double that age and I've not done anything. And you realize only as you get older, and that's something that I've realized, is that time is a gift. It genuinely is. And enjoy it and slow it down. I was in such a hurry. I was so restless as a young person. I'm restless in a way, but I guess, slowly learned how, every moment that I get is a bonus, and there is no real hurry. Nobody's holding their breath. Nobody but you are as invested in this idea of you're doing X, Y, Z. And you kind of hinge all your happiness and all your, or put all this pressure on yourself because of that. When actually that moment just lived in is just fleeting, and just lived is just, if it's just lived in a relaxed way, is going to give you much, more pleasure than.
Thank you so much for speaking with me today and making time for this conversation. Thank you.